Hi there, welcome to the Redbridge YouTube channel for Geography at Redbridge. What we're looking at today is the resource management. First introduction is going to be about the food unit. Okay, so if we remember, this unit has got three sections: food, water, and energy. Energy is the main one that we're going to be looking at. But today we're going to start with food. We're going to do a little lesson on water, and then we'll start planning a whole unit on energy. Right, so at times during this there will be opportunities for you to pause the video. What you'll need to do is do the tasks. Make sure the tasks are written down, and obviously take any photos, send them into Google Classroom so that we know that you have been doing the work. Obviously I'll be giving you the answers, but try not to cheat, because it's not really learning anything if you do it that way. So let's have a look. First of all, we've got food. Okay, some of you may recognize this from food tech. It's the Eat Well plate. It's what we're recommended. We get all of our foods from. If you look here, you've got carbohydrates in here. You've got your vitamins in there. I think you've got your fats in here, and probably your proteins. Looking at, you've got your nuts and the eggs and tuna and stuff. So that's your proteins, okay? And obviously what we've got here are man-made fats like spreadable butters and cooking oils and things like that. So the whole point of this is that this is roughly what we would need to eat to have a good diet. Okay, so if you look at that, it's roughly 1/3 carbohydrate, 1/3 minerals, and probably about, I would say, 1/8 of that is proteins and slightly less of fats. Okay, put that all together and you get the energy that we need to survive. Now, obviously, some parts of the world, there are people that don't get the right amount of energy. This is taken, I believe, from Eastern Africa, probably Ethiopia, back in the 1980s. And these children here are clearly suffering from what we term malnourishment. Malnourishment is basically meaning that they are not getting enough calories to live a healthy lifestyle. If you look carefully, obviously, they're very emaciated. Their bones are showing through. Clearly, they're not eating enough. So their body is burning off more calories than they're actually receiving. Now, when a country is suffering with malnourishment, or people do, it effectively means that they've not got the energy, they can't work, and they are very, very likely to get very, very sick very quickly. The second thing that we need to look at is malnutrition. Now, malnutrition is ever slightly different. You might be getting significantly, you might be getting your calories in, but you may not have this balance that the Eat Well plate shows here. And this person here is suffering from a very old illness called scurvy, something that sailors used to get back in the 16th, 17th century, where they weren't getting enough vitamins, namely vitamin C. And what happens with you get scurvy, you get your gums recede, you can then start getting ulcers, they get infected, your teeth fall out, and then there are other issues like skin diseases and things that you get with scurvy. Okay, so malnutrition can lead to diseases and illnesses to do with the bones, to do with the skin, and strength, etc. So two things together. You put these two things together, okay, so malnutrition quite often goes hand in hand with malnourishment. So obviously if you're not getting enough food, then you're obviously not getting the right type of food as well. What will happen then is that we can collectively call that food insecurity. And what I'd like you to do at this particular stage now is, can you make a note of that key term, food insecurity? It is effectively where you're not sure about how much food you can get and whether you're going to get the right type of food. Okay, if you need to replay this, just wind it back, but I'm going to pause just for a second. Okay, so just so you're clear with that, food insecurity is where you are unclear about how much food you're going to be able to receive and the actual types of food you're going to receive. And a real indicator of that in Britain and America is that you may have a family which is living off of McDonald's every single day of the week. Therefore, they are not suffering with malnourishment typically because they're getting a huge amount of calories, but the malnutrition is a problem because they're not getting the right balance of food in their diet, and therefore they will then start to get things like obesity, diabetes, and all those problems will come on because they're not eating the right type of food. Okay, So moving on, size 2. One of the questions that you'll normally be asked is to describe the distribution of global undernourishment. And again, if we look at undernourishment, we can put that key term in there, food insecurity. Now, typically in the exam, you will get at least one of these maps, and we call this a choropleth map. It shows one category, but in different varieties. So effectively, it's almost like a bar graph, but it's put into map form instead. So that's a choropleth. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to look at the distribution. That keyword again, distribution, is how far things are spread out. So we've got distribution of how food insecurity or undernourishment on this map is spread out around the world. And there are some clear patterns. So the first thing that you would obviously look for is this continent in here. Okay, Africa. Okay, so we've got Africa. You need to be secure with the fact that that is Africa. Okay, Africa is going to come up very prominently in all three of these subunits. So Africa in there. You notice we've got scale. So in the area that I've ringed is there are some countries which have got more than 40% undernourished. There's some countries which have got between 20 and 40%. So that's nearly over 1 in 5 of the population. Some countries in here are between 5 and 10%. You'll notice the North African countries here. So you've got Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Egypt. They're between 2.5% and 5%. There is nothing in this continent to suggest that undernourishment is below 2.5% of the population. That's quite a stark fact to have. So you could use no under 2.5%. You could use terms like mostly above 10%. It's quite a good one to use there as well. All right. Another significant area to use is you've got this area here. Okay. So you've got North America, Russia, and Western Europe. Oh, pen's not working particularly well. Sorry. Equals minus 2.5%. So most of that. You've then got your anomalies. So here you've got Brazil and Uruguay. Sorry, Brazil and Paraguay. Uruguay. Focus on Brazil. And this one here, you've obviously got Australia and New Zealand. So most of the countries with below 2.5% undernutrition are found in the northern part of the world, or northern hemisphere, but typically Canada and USA and northern and western Europe. The anomalies here are Brazil and Australia and New Zealand. Okay, I'm just going to rub that off there. So there's two ways of describing the distribution. The last one really it would show a massive amount of geographical skills. So I'm just going to get rid of this. If you were to look at the pattern as well, rather than just the continents, you'll notice that there is a pattern across the map. All right, and what I'll do just very quickly, once I take this off, is I'm going to draw the equator on there as it lies. Please bear in mind that the world is not vertical. Okay, it is on a 24 degrees slant, and therefore the equator roughly runs like that. The equator roughly runs like that. Okay, so what we've now got is a pattern of undernourishment from southwestern of the world in a band to the northeast. There is a band across the middle of the world through the tropics as well where there is undernourishment. So that is something that shows a little bit of extra geographical knowledge. So we're going to move on. Now, what we've got here are 3 questions. Okay, so the first one is how many South American countries score between 2.5% and 5% for global undernourishment? And how many African countries have a score of over 40%? You need to be very careful with this one. This one is generally the type of question here will try and trick you out a little bit. And then lastly, describe the distribution of global undernourishment. Now that would be worth 3 marks in your exam, and you need to put into place some of the skills that I've just asked you to watch just on the previous slide. If you need to go back to the previous slide, have a look, watch it again, wind the video back, and then have a think about that answer. But you really do need to make 3 totally separate points, okay? And remember, undernourishment is not just the bad, it's the good. That still counts as undernourished, even though it's minus 2.5%. It still means that there are 2.5% of the population or below which are not receiving enough food, calories, or nutrition. Okay, I shall let you have a go at that. I'm going to pause the video now and you can have a go at answering the question, and then I'll give you some answers. Right, so the answers then. Let's go back one. Sorry. How many South American countries score between 2.5% and 5% for undernourishment? So the 2.5% to 5%, what you're actually looking for is this yellow bar here. And if you look at South America, so South America really does start here. Anything in that belt there is considered North and Central America. So what we've got here, 2 countries, 1, 2. This one is Argentina, and this one is Chile. Okay, now I'm not going to be able to write these out for the Africa map, but there are 2 countries. Your answers for that should be 2. Writing 2 is exactly what the exam wants to see. They don't need you to list the countries, but how many African countries have a score of over 40%? Now, what I should have said to you was to enlarge this picture if you can, but there are in fact actually 5. Okay, so what we're looking at here is Madagascar, we are looking at Zimbabwe, Zambia, Uganda, and then we're looking at the Central African Republic, which is this country here. Okay, so there are in fact 5. You need to be careful. This one here, Zambia, looks like 2 different countries. It is in fact 1. It's just got a bit of a funny border with the Democratic Republic of Congo in there. Right, describe a distribution of global undernourishment. 1 mark. If you had mentioned 2.5%, sorry, below 2.5% is found in the north of the world with a named location. Naming locations is massively important. 1 mark if you'd put anomalies, such as Brazil and Australia. Just going to keep that one in there. 1 mark, mainly Africa. And again, you would need then to put a use of the data in here. So you'd say highest concentration of 40% to 60% in there. Okay, you'd obviously get that 1 mark for a band of undernourishment following the tropics. Okay, so that is basically, it doesn't want any explanation at all. All it wants you to do is it just wants you to point out the distribution. The key points of this are, the key learning aspect is that you need to name groups of countries, or not of, sorry, or locations. You must have data, and you must show a spread of data as well. Right, so I'm out of time for this video, so I'm going to save this one. I'm going to produce a second video for the rest of the questions. So please end here, watch it back if you need to, make some corrections for the work, and again, take the photos and upload them.